about her victory, and she hugs Melfina. Kelvin applauds her skills from the tower and says she has gotten strong in a short time. They receive an attack abruptly, but they defend themselves. They spot a male and 4 female warriors in the sky, and Kelvin smiles wickedly. General Clive from the Trison Castle stays up in the sky with his 4 female warriors. He sees Eiffel, takes an interest in her, and calls her his favorite elf among all he has seen. He commands her to be his slave and applies the charming eye skill that allows anyone to follow his command. Kelvin speedily blocks the attack, and Clive gets angry at Kelvin for intercepting his magic. Kelvin tells him he has no right to lay hands on his woman. Clive calls it a cheesy line. Kelvin views his stats and notices his unique skills. He questions if Clive was reincarnated. Clive, surprised at this, says his concealment rank is A, and he can only detect it with his appraisal eyes if he is reincarnated as well. Kelvin commands Eiffel to go inside the village as he will be destroying the watchtower. Eiffel answers and runs down using the stealth skill. Clive sees this and calls her to stay back, but Kelvin attacks him unexpectedly, and he loses his balance. He destroys the watchtower and forms 4 obsidian edges lances. He attacks Clive, but he blocks them off using his helix barrier. Clive pushes the lances away easily. Kelvin concludes he is strong, and he does his sneakish smile. Clive questions his creepy laugh and advises him to watch his back instead. The female warriors with Clive attack Kelvin, and he blocks them with his obsidian edges lances. He notices they are charmed, and he tries not to injure them. Kelvin calls him an unimpressive hero for charming his party with magic. Clive tells him he is wrong, and they are excited to serve a super handsome master. He says Kelvin is outnumbered and he should die so he can acquire Eiffel as his. Eiffel immediately shoots a penetrating attack arrow into his helix barrier to shut him up. Kelvin surprises him and summons his 4 golems, and Clive is impressed with his black magic. He sends his female warriors to attack the golems, but Kelvin instructs his golems not to kill them. Clive and Kelvin face each other and start to attack themselves. Kelvin shoots a non-stop attack, and Clive blocks them out. Clive launches his attacks, and Kelvin runs fast away from it. He suddenly stops when he realizes the shots are touching his golems and the female warriors. Clive says he doesn't care about them, and has many others. Kelvin goes farther toward the sky, and Clive notices he is trying to protect the warriors. He calls Kelvin Mr. Battle Junkie, and says he enjoys power and battles just like him. Kelvin accepts that power makes him excited, but he says if he doesn't care about people who love him, then he is pathetic and ugly. Clive looks at him annoyingly, and says he doesn't like him, and Kelvin says the same. He uses the Helix Barrier spell to attack him, while Kelvin uses his Vortex Edge spell. They cause a bright light emission, and Clive sustains an injury to his face while Kelvin's staff disassembles. Annoyed at his scar, he summons his ultimate Rank S magic, and his magic surrounds the entire village. It breezes everyone, and Kelvin, trying to find his balance, says it's looking bad. He instructs Clotho to bring out his Rank S Blackstaff Disaster. He summons his inner ultimate Rank S magic and attacks Clive with a Boreas Death Scythe spell. He cuts Clive's magic core into 2, and his magic clears from the air. Clive lands on the ground with a mighty thud, and his legs rip off his body. Kelvin moves down to finish him off, but Clive's body suddenly disappears from the spot. Kelvin turns back and sees another general with a large monster. He introduces himself as Tristan Faze, the mixed demon beast army general who insinuated the attack on the elven village. Kelvin wonders about his summoning magic, and he links it with the monster. Tristan admits they have lost the battle, but he retreats and insists on going with General Clive because of his purpose. He immediately disappears from Kelvin's sight. His servants connect with him through the servant network. They all ask questions about the general, but he apologizes for letting him go. He says he's heading back to the village, and they will meet there. Ethel relates the success of the battle to the Elder, and how they defeated the Trison generals and saved the village. The Elder asks the elves to prepare a banquet for this victory. Gerald teases her about how Kelvin claimed her as his woman. She blushes and says she is happy her master said it. Kelvin comes down to join them and asks her what he said. Eiffel goes down on her knees after turning red in embarrassment. Sarah, Ryan, and Melfina race with each other back to Kelvin. Ryan teleports with her wolf using a spell she just invented, and she wins the race. Sarah expresses her pain for losing to Ryan and not Melfina. Mel tells her to be happy for Ryan's growth, and she smiles and congratulates her. Ryan chats about her adventure and victory with Kelvin. In the Trison Castle, General Clive is chained and laid on a surface with his legs healed by Tristan. Tristan walks in and informs him he will be a test subject, as a reincarnated being. He intends to test 1,342 cursed weapons on him and heal him back. He hands over to his subjects, instructs them not to let him die, and leaves. At the elven village, the villagers and the adventurers hold a lively banquet, and they are merry. Kelvin sits down alone under a tree, and Aphil comes up to meet him. She shows him a gift she received from the elder that belongs to her mother, and he assists her in fixing it to her hair. She expresses her joy for coming to the village, and cherishes the elves' acceptance of her despite being half-elven. She asks what is on his mind, and he says he wants to be very strong so he can protect the people he loves, and he's grateful for meeting his network in this world. The other adventurers call out to him while on their way to meet him, Sarah jokes about Kelvin, and they all run up to meet him. A young girl sprints towards Kelvin and thanks him for saving her village. Kelvin pats her on the head, and she starts laughing to everyone's surprise. She introduces herself as Leohart Gon, the Beast King of Gon. They all open their mouths wide in astonishment. He says he can take different forms, and has been watching Kelvin's exams. He says that Kelvin passed his rank S exams, and he is now a summoner. His party congratulates him on his success, and he shows his happiness. The king invites him to his crowning ceremony, which will be held in 4 days, and he will be competing with other rank S summoners. Kelvin shows his excitement at this battle, but his party looks at him and his awkward interest in battles.